Hey guys, it's me Cherise from Sher from 2000. Welcome back to another video, and I am still continuing reading my little stories from my Walt Disney Storyline Collection book. And if you can't tell by the way that I am dressed right now, I am going to be reading Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. You know, this is a very important movie for any Disney fans because it is the very first animated movie that Disney had created. And since then, they have created a lot of stuff. And yeah, I just thought it would be really nice to read this movie. Or the book on the movie. Yeah. So I hope you guys are ready. And let's get started. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, a lovely queen sat by her window sewing. As she worked, she pricked her finger with a needle. 3 drops of blood fell on the snow white lining. Oh, how happy I would be if I had a little girl with lips as red as blood, skin as white as snow, and hair black as ebony, thought the queen as she sewed. When spring came, her wish was granted. A little daughter was born to the king and queen. She was all her mother she had desired. But the queen's happiness was very brief. As she held her lovely baby in her arms, the queen whispered, "Little Snow White," and then she died. When the lonely king was married again, his new queen was beautiful, but alas, she was very heartless and cruel. She was very jealous of the lovely ladies of the kingdom, but not as jealous as she was to the poor little Princess Snow White. Now, the queen's most prized possession was her magic mirror. Every day she looked into it and asked, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And the magic mirror replied that she was the fairest in the kingdom as well. But another lady was named. The queen would be furious. She would summon her huntsman and have that lady killed. Ugh, brutal. As years passed, Snow White grew more and more beautiful, and her sweet nature became everyone's favorite in the kingdom. Everyone except for the queen. The queen's chief feared that Snow White might grow up to be the fairest in the land, so she had to banish the young princess to the servants' quarters. She made Snow White dressed in rags and forced her to be a slave from morning till night. But while working, she was dreaming about a handsome prince who would come to save her one day and carry her off to his castle. And as she dusted and scrubbed and dreamed, Snow White grew more beautiful day by day. At last, the day came when the queen asked, and she was dreading, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And the mirror replied, "Her lips' blood is red, her hair like night, her skin like snow, her name's Snow White." The queen's face grew pale with anger. The queen rushed off from the room and called her huntsman. "Take Snow White into the forest and bring me her heart in this jewel box." The huntsman bowed in his head with grief. He had no choice but to obey the cruel queen's command. Snow White had no fear of the kindly huntsman. She went happily into the forest with him. It was beautiful there in the trees, and the princess, not knowing what was in store for her, skipped along beside the huntsman, now stopping by to pick up violets and singing a happy tune. The huntsman watched Snow White as she skipped and sang along through the forest. At last the poor huntsman could not bear it no longer. He fell to his knees before the princess. "I cannot kill you, princess," he cried out, "even though it's the queen's command. Run into the forest and hide. You must never return to the castle." Then away the huntsman went. On his way back to the castle, he killed some type of animal and took its heart in a jeweled box to the wicked queen. Alone in the forest, Snow White wept in fright. Deeper and deeper into the woods she ran, half blinded with tears. It seemed to her that the root of the trees were reaching out and tripping over her feet. Those branches reached out and clutched her dress as she passed. At last, weak with terror, Snow White fell to the ground. As the sun began to set, she lay there, sobbing her poor little heart out. Ever so quietly, out from the burrows and the nests in the hollow trees, crept the little woodland creatures. Bunnies and chipmunks and raccoons and squirrels all gathered around to keep the princess company. When Snow White looked up and saw them, she smiled through her tears. At the sight of her smile, the little animals crept closer, snuggling in her lap and nestling in her arms. The birds sang their gayest melodies to Snow White, and the little forest cleaning was filled with joy. I ever felt so much better now, Snow White told her friends, but I still do need a place to sleep. One of the birds chirped something, and the little animals nodded in agreement. Then off flew the birds, leading the way. The rabbits, chipmunks, and squirrels followed after, and Snow White came along with her arm around the neck of a gentle mother deer. At last, through the tangle of a brush, Snow White saw a tiny cottage, which was nestled in a clearing up ahead. Oh, it's just like a little dollhouse, and she clapped her hands in delight. Skipping across a little bridge to the house, Snow White peeked through the window. There it seemed that no one was home, but the sink was filled with high cups and saucers and plates, which looked through have never been washed. Dirty little shirts and wrinkled little trousers hung over the chairs, and everything was blanketed with dust. Maybe the children who live here have no mother, said Snow White. I need someone to take care of him. Let's clean the house and surprise them. So she went in, followed by her forest friends. Snow White found an old broom in the corner and swept the floor, with the help of her animal friends, of course. Then Snow White washed all the dishes and all the clothes, and set the kettle with delicious soup bubbling on the hearth. Now, she said to the animals, let's see what's upstairs. The woodland animals followed Snow White up the stairs. There they found 7 little beds in a row. Why, they have very unique names carved on them, said Snow White. Dog, Happy, Sneezy. Oh, such funny names for children. Grumpy, Bashful, Sleepy. I'm a bit sleepy myself. Yarning, Snow White sank down across the beds and fell asleep. Quietly the animals stole away, and the birds flew out of the window. All was still in the tiny house was the little princess. Hi-ho, it's off from work we go. 7 little men came marching through the woods, singing on their way. As they came in sight of their cottage, they stopped in short. Smoke was curling from the chimney, and the door was standing wide open. Oh, look! Someone was in our house. Maybe it's a ghost, or a goblin, or even a demon. I knew it, said one of the little men with a grumpy look. I've been warning you, dwarves, for the last years that something awful was about to happen. At last, on a timid tiptoe, in they went. Someone's stolen our dishes, growled the grumpy one. No, they're hidden in the cupboard, said Happy with a grin. But hey, my cup's been washed. All the sugar's gone. At that moment, a sound came from upstairs. It was Snow White, yarning and turning in her sleep. Up there, the goblin, the demon, the ghost, said one of the scared little men. Shouldering their picket axes, they went upstairs, all 7 frightened little dwarves. The 7 little men stood in a row at the foot of the beds. They all stared at the sleeping Snow White. What is it? Whispered one. It might be Purity. Another. Oh, bless my soul, I think it's a little girl, said third. And then Snow White woke up. Oh, why? You're not children at all, she exclaimed. You're little men. Now let me see if I can guess your names. And she did. Doc and Bashful, Happy, Sleepy, and Sneezy, and the last of them, Dopey and Grumpy too. Supper's not quite ready yet, said Snow White. You'll just have enough time to wash and change your clothes. Wash? Cried the little men with horror in their tones. They hadn't washed in, several hundred years. Man, they must be stinky, have really bad hygiene. But onward they marched out to get ready for dinner. And it was worth it in the end, for such supper they had never tasted, nor they have ever had such a fun evening. All the forest folk gathered around the cottage windows and watched them play, dance, and sing. Back at the castle, the huntsman prepared and presented to the wicked queen the box where she had thought was Snow White's heart. Aha! she gloated. "At last!" And down the castle corridor she hurried straight to her magic mirror. Then she asked, "Now, magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" But the honest mirror replied, "With the 7 dwarfs will spend the night. The fairest in the land is still Snow White." Then the queen realized that the huntsman had tricked her. She flung the jewel box in the mirror, shattering the glass into 1,000 pieces. Then, shaking with rage, the queen hurried down to a dark cave below the palace, where she worked her black magic. First, she had to disguise herself as a toothless old peddler woman dressed in tattered rags. Then she searched for her book of magic spells for a horrid spell to work on Snow White. "Now, what shall it be?" she muttered to herself. "The poison apple, the sleeping death. Perfect." In the great kettle she stirred up a poisoned brew. Then she dipped an apple into it. 1, 2, 3. And the apple came out a beautiful rosy red, the most tempting apple you hope to see. Cackling with wicked pleasure, the queen dropped her poison apple into a basket full of fruit, and started her journey out to the home of the 7 dwarfs. She felt certain that her plan would work and be successful, for the magic spell of the sleeping death could only be broken by a love's first kiss. The queen was certain that no lover would find Snow White asleep in the forest. It was morning when the queen reached to the great forest, closed into the dwarfs' cottage. For her hiding spot, she saw Snow White saying goodbye to the 7 little men as they marched off to work. "Now, my dear, watch out for that queen." "Oh, of course. Have a lovely day," Snow White said. But when the poor, raggedy old woman with a basket of apples appeared outside to the window, Snow White never thought to be afraid. She gave the old woman a drink of water and spoke to her kindly. "Oh, thank you, my dear," the queen cackled. "And now in return, won't you have one of my beautiful apples?" And she held out Snow White the poison fruit of death. Down swooped the little birds and animals, pecking and clawing at the queen. "Oh, stop it! Stop it, my friends! Shame on you!" Snow White cried. Then she took the poison apple. She made a wish, and she bit into it, fell down lifeless on the cottage floor. Away went the frantic birds and woodland animals into the forest to warn the 7 dwarfs. Now the dwarfs had decided not to do their regular jobs that day. They were hard at work making a gift for Snow White, to tell her for their love. The little dwarfs looked in surprise as the birds and animals crowded around them. At first, they did not understand. Then they realized that Snow White must have been in danger. "The queen!" they cried out, and they ran from home. But the little men were too late. They came racing down to the clearing, just in time to see the queen slip away in the shadows. They chased her through the gloomy woods until she plunged into a bottomless cliff and disappeared forever. For the vultures had their last meal of the night. But they did not bring Snow White back to life. When the dwarfs came home, they found Snow White lying as fast asleep. They built her a bed of crystal and gold and set up for the forest. They had kept watch day and night. After a long time, a handsome prince of a nearby kingdom heard travelers tell a lovely tale of a princess asleep in the forest, and he rode there to see her. At once he knew that his love was true, so he knelt beside her and kissed her on the lips. At touch of the love's first kiss, Snow White awoke. There, bending over her, was the prince of her dreams. Snow White knew that she loved him too. She said goodbye to the dwarfs and her woodland creature friends as she rode off with her prince to the castle of her dreams, and they lived happily ever after. The end. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that little tale of Snow White. Please follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, as well as my second YouTube channel, SherYourCreations. I'll be back tomorrow for another tale from my book. Have a nice day, guys. Bye!